Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rishabh Gulati, and I want to present an episode of an online series I run called Magna, Indica, but from our studios, because there are certain things we have to see, not just talk about. It makes it a lot more impactful. As we speak, the World Hindu Congress is happening in Thailand. Ladies and gentlemen, when the World Hindu Congress happens, when Hindus from all over the world gather, not just from India, but from Thailand and Cambodia and Laos and Indonesia, they gather from Japan, from Germany, from North America. What is the point of conversation? And the point of conversation we've seen is turning towards re-understanding, re-awareness. Because as I've discussed in a previous episode of Magna Indica, we have lost complete touch with our Indic roots, who we are. We are highly confused, vindictive and virulent about what Hindutva means, what Hinduism means, what Ram Rajya means. And within the heartland, which is Bharat, here in India, if we ourselves are so viciously confused and combative, we shouldn't be surprised that if in Western countries certain vested interests are trying to create a phantom that there is some sort of Hindu extremism, fanatical fascism, genocide of minorities about to happen. The points of conversation at the World Hindu Congress for the past couple of days have been, number one, the Thailand Prime Minister coming out to say that the roots of world peace can be found in Hinduism. Now, many people, Hindus themselves, will think Hinduism is a religion. And then we have to remind ourselves that no, it's a way of life. There is no one book defining Hinduism as a religion. It's a series of theosophies that has become modern day practice by amalgamating so many centuries of virtues, of stories of good and evil, of philosophy and how to live your life. Now, if you look at India, the Crusades didn't begin here, the jihads didn't begin here, the religious wars didn't happen here, the First World War, the Second World War didn't start here. So perhaps there is a hope that in a country that has nearly 1 billion Hindus, has more than 200 million Muslims, which was the birthplace of Jainism and Buddhism, Sikhism, has never persecuted the Jews, has not done the jihads and crusades. Maybe the answer in diversity is to be found here. We discussed last week about the kingdom of Ayutthaya in Thailand, which was the progenitor of the modern Thai state, whose current head of state is still called King Rama the 10th. So the Indic civilizational roots, whether Ramayana is performed in Bali or Laos or Cambodia, are equally large. And some of these are near cent% Buddhist majority countries. There are hardly any Hindus in places where they have no acrimony in saying that the head of state is King Rama. So there is a need for, and perhaps the first happy signs of, an Indic and the Hinduic renaissance, a Punarjagaran taking place. Now, if you track European history, there's something called the Dark Ages of medieval Europe. There are a period of time that lost track. India seems to be emerging from that period of time that lost track. And the good thing is, if you saw the European model of how the sequence of events went, a classical revivalism when it turns into the Michelangelos and the Da Vincis, is an excellent thing. It becomes the progenitor of scientific thought. It leads to the Newtons. So a classical revivalism that is taking place, not just in Bharat, but amongst the quote-unquote Hindu peoples, the Indic civilizational roots across South and Southeast Asia, this classical revivalism is an excellent thing. But it needs to be put into a context, and sometimes that context is physical. So let's begin by putting an image on your screens. Let's put it up front, fully on our screen so that we can see it. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is recognizably the Qutub Minar in Delhi. Now you all recognize the Qutub Minar. At the bottom right end, of course, is the famed iron pillar. Now the iron pillar, we know, dates back to Ashokan Mauryan times. So the iron pillar, of course, is more than 2,000 years old. Ashokan Mauryan times, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching from a foreign country, is in the context of the similar period around Alexander the Great, so the 2nd or 3rd century BC. The Qutub Minar, of course, is a more recent occurrence. It was built, or the construction began in the year 1200 by Qutubuddin Aibak. Firoz Shah Tughlaq completed the last story, the 5th story, in 1368. So what is the Qutub Minar? Sticks out in the landscape of the Mehrauli area of Delhi. What was it built for? So you can argue that it was built as an observation post, but most likely it was built as a victory tower. This was the victory of the first Islamic Sultanate to rule over Delhi. That's why they built this tower. And how did they build the tower? Now here's another image on your screens. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a colonnade that surrounds the Qutub Minar. This is a stone from the colonnade in which you see in the center, that's a cow with a hump. Now, why would an Islamic architect carve a cow into the stone of a victory tower dedicated to the rise of the Islamic Sultanates in Delhi? The answer is there's no reason, because the depiction of animate forms, as you know, is haram in Islam. So what explains the fact that along the colonnades you can find carvings of murtis? You can see one in the white stone and you can see one in the red sandstone, which is the smaller one. Female figurines. The bodies are there, but the faces are not there. And the reason, ladies and gentlemen, the faces are not there, have a look, the faces have been chiseled off, is because all of these stones were repurposed from Hindu, most probably Ganesh temples and Jain temples pre-existing the Islamic era in New Delhi, or in Delhi at that point of time. Here is the next example. That is recognizably the figure of Lord Ganesh with his trunk, but the face chiseled off. So probably taken from a Ganesh temple. This is the stuff with which the Qutub Minar was built out of. Now, some archaeologists, including people like K.K. Mohammed, argue that the inscriptions indicate that 27 Hindu and Jain temples were demolished and their stones were repurposed in building the compound where, of course, Iltutmish is buried in the same compound, his grave is there, and to build the victory tower, which is the Qutub Minar. Now let's put this into context, ladies and gentlemen, because context is important, which is why we are here. It is not unusual for stones to be repurposed by conquerors in building new architecture, including religious architecture. Now have a look at this image. For many people, easy to recognize, that's the Vatican. This has been taken from on top of St. Peter's. I've been here, I've climbed the top of St. Peter's Basilica, I think I probably have an image which is almost exactly the same, but with me standing there in that balcony looking across the Vatican, and in the distance is the river Tiber. You cross the bridge and you head into the ancient city of Rome. Now have a look at the oval colonnade. It's always intriguing that a building that is square with a dome should have a very interesting architecture, that a square building is then angled into an oval and then further angled into a straight line. So have a look at the oval colonnade. Now let's take another image and a top-down look. So this is the oval colonnade from the top. You can see the oval. You can see on the top the very interesting angularity leading into the oval, and that is ironically called St. Peter's Square. It's not a square, it's actually an oval. Okay. Now I want you to burn this image of this oval in your screens, because I'm going to show you the next image. Okay. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the oval shaped amphitheater Flavium, also known as the Colosseum. The amphitheater Flavium, of course, built during the time of Vespasian and Titus, and it's the iconic landmark existing structure of Rome. It's been around for the better part of almost 2000 years. Now the reason this is an oval and this is an oval is not a coincidence, because all the stone pillars, which was the colonnade surrounding the Colosseum, built by the emperors Vespasian and Titus, were repurposed to build St. Peter's. That's the reason. And here's an example. Now have a look. This is the temple of Antoninus. This is also in the Roman Forum. You see the lines on the, have a look at this, the lines on the top of the pillars. These were carved in because ropes were attached in an attempt to pull down these pillars to repurpose them. But because the pillars were so massive that they failed and they gave up. So this was a Roman temple whose pillars were being repurposed. So it wasn't unusual in historical times. And I mentioned Vespasian and Titus. So the Catholic Church destroyed, repurposed the stones of the pagan temples of Venus and Castor and Pollux and Antoninus, and rebuilt St. Peter's with the marble, with the stonework, with the masonry. So it's not unusual. And I mentioned, like I said, Vespasian and Titus. Here's another image, ladies and gentlemen. This is known as the Arch of Titus. And Titus was also the commander under his father as emperor, who in the year 70 sacked Jerusalem. The Arch of Titus itself was built in AD 81. So this inscription dates back to AD 81, and this is depicting the sack of Jerusalem. And when they sacked Jerusalem in 70 AD, what did they destroy? They destroyed the second temple built by King Herod on the Temple Mount, which is the point of dispute between the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Temple Mount as we speak in Jerusalem. The Temple of Herod, which was probably built in the 6th century BC, is the second temple. The first temple was, of course, the Temple of Solomon, which potentially dates back to the 10th century BC. So the Romans destroyed the temple, and this is the depiction. So you see this curved carving. This is the Jewish menorah. It's a candelabra that the Romans carried away, and it has been lost to history. We don't know what happened to it. Recreations have been put in Jerusalem, but we don't know what happened to it. So the Romans in turn sacking and destroying and demolishing, razing to the ground the temple of Herod in Jerusalem in 70 AD. So I said there'll be context. So now let me put the context back. This, in a modern context, is a recreation of what the temple of Herod would have looked like when the Romans destroyed it. This is a sculpture of what it potentially would have looked like. Okay? Now, let's bring this back to an Indian context, because I wanted to establish the context. So it wasn't just Islamic rulers who demolished temples and did things. Have a look at the current situation And the current situation is important because there is a particular reason that no temples exist in the north of India. This image, of course, is the construction of the Ayodhya temple. You know the construction is about to be completed and very shortly the temple will be inaugurated. Here's another image. This is India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This was 3 years ago when the foundation stone laying ceremony was happening. So the temple is almost complete and the inaugural is going to happen very shortly. So this is the rebuilding of the temple of Ayodhya. Now you all know the case history of Ayodhya. If you don't know, it was demolished. It's a site which is the birthplace of Lord Ram. Many disputes have happened about exactly the archaeology and the history of it. Okay? But in Hindu Indic history, the birthplace of Lord Ram is as important as the birthplace of Guru Nanak, now known as Nankana Sahib, or Makkah, the birthplace of the Prophet, or a holy site of the Temple of Solomon. It's an important site. So temple is being built. Now why is the temple being built in 2023-24? The reason the temple is being built in 2023-24 is because no temple existed on this site. And if you remember your recent history, well, there was a mosque which was targeted and attacked and demolished in the early 1990s. Those criminal cases are still ongoing in this country. But there was only a murti, just a murti, because the temple didn't exist. And to put that into context, this is Kashi Vishwanath, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? Now, the reason Kashi Vishwanath is particularly important because the site itself is at least 2,500, maybe 3,000, maybe 4,000 years old. Varanasi is supposed to be one of the oldest living cities in the world, continuously living cities in the world. So definitely older than Rome, probably dating back to Egyptian periods, at least a couple of thousand years older than the Guptas and the Cholas and even the Mauryas. So the site is probably 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years old. The temple of Kashi Vishwanath was first destroyed in the 12th century BC by Islamic invaders. Then again, when it was partially reconstructed, Aurangzeb came and finished the job in the 17th century. It was destroyed 3 times, in the 12th century, 15th century, and then again by Aurangzeb in the 17th century. It was completely demolished, which is why this current structure dates only to 1780. So Hindu civilization is supposed to be thousands of years old, world's oldest religion. Why are the temples being built in 2023? This one is only 200 years old. And this one is credited to the Holkars. 1780 they built it. Then it was the Scindias of Gwalior. Daulat Rao Scindia's widow also made a donation. She built the colonnade that surrounds the temple. And finally, in 1828, Maharaja Ranjit Singh made a large donation of gold for the temple. Now, of course, you see the very tiny temple here. For reference of context, you can see the people standing. So it's a very tiny temple, just a couple of stories tall. It's a very tiny temple with a colonnade. This colonnade was built by the Gwaliors. The temples was built by the Holkars. This is all a couple of hundred years old, okay? Because there is, of course, on the left side is a mosque. Because the structure was demolished not once, but twice, but 3 times. Let me get another image if I can on our screens to put this into context. Here is a very familiar structure. Kedarnath, you all recognize this. There's massive flooding there in 2013. The Kedarnath is a Shiv temple. Now, mythology says that the site was first constructed upon by the Pandavas of the Mahabharata. The current structure was probably built in the 8th century by Adi Sankaracharya. Again, not a very large structure. You can have a look over here. For context, the people that are standing there. So it's just a 15-20 foot structure with a 30-odd foot minaret. So this is the holy site in the north. So Kedarnath is one. I've shown you Ayodhya. We've discussed Kasi Viswanath. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Krishna Janmabhoomi in Mathura. Okay, so Mathura being the birthplace of Lord Krishna, many people are familiar with the story that you had his parents who were put into jail because of a tale that had been spun on the Krishna Janmasthan, and that's where Lord Krishna was born. There are three main temples in this Kasi Viswanath site, and they're very familiar. Keshav Dev is the temple, Bhagvat Bhavan, the Garbh Griha. Now, what is very interesting is that although the site construction archaeology probably dates back to the 6th century BC, so that is 2600 years ago, with one of the major temples being built under the reign of Chandragupta II in 400 BC. So the temple itself was built in 400 BC. Then, of course, in 1018 came Mahmud of Ghazni, and he made a large ode to the temple. He said that if I sit down and get my people to construct the temple, which is his architects and followers, it might take us 200 years with all our resources, with millions of dinars, and we probably couldn't build a temple this great. So what did he do? He took 100 camel loads of loot, and he literally tore down the temple and burnt everything else. So that was Mahmud of Ghazni in 1018. In 1207, a small Vishnu temple was rebuilt on the site. This current temple, you won't believe it, was built in 1982. Because when they restarted rebuilding the temple after the Ghaznavid period, guess who came along? Aurangzeb. And on the left side of your screens, of course, you see the Shahi Eidgah. So now let me just take you to the black and white photograph. Here it is. Okay. So this is the Shahi Eidgah. As you can clearly see, there's nothing around it, because they built the Eidgah on the spot, so nothing else could be reconstructed. This was the time of Aurangzeb. So the current temple, which is here, this is the temple, Krishna Janmasthan. This was built in 1982 by the Dalmia business house. So it's only just exactly 40 years old. Okay, and this is, of course, Dwarkadish in Mathura. So there is a reason, ladies and gentlemen, and let me take another example if I can. This is Pushkar. Okay, this is in Rajasthan. This is one of the only temples to Brahma. This is a 14th century temple, very tiny, very small. It's a one-story temple, tiny little plot. Okay, now you compare these temples to what I've just shown you of St. Peter's and whatnot. They're all small because they're all demolished and rebuilt over a period of time. So you can't find temples in the north of India. So where do you find them? You mostly find them in the south of India. And let's quickly now take you through some beautiful temples in the south of India. And the reason they exist in the south of India is primarily because they were never destroyed. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Ranganathan Swami temple. This is a Vishnu temple. It is at least 2100 years old. It is one of the oldest temples in the world, and is the third largest current Hindu temple, Ranganathan Swami. Then this is the caves of Eloda. This is the Kailasha temple in Eloda. This goes back to the 8th century AD. This was built by the Rashtrakutas. A couple of other lovely pictures of the carvings in the Eloda caves. They are world famous. Have a look. This is another rampant lions found in the Eloda caves. Remember, they are carved from sheer rock. This is the Adi Kumbeshwar temple. Now, the Adi Kumbeshwar temple, ladies and gentlemen, is a 12th century temple. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was built by the Cholas in the south of India. Currently, it's a Shiv temple, 9th century in fact, built by the Cholas. This is in Tamil Nadu. Have a look at this. Look at the carvings on this multi-story temple. Can you imagine that? Here you go, 9th century AD. Have a look at this. Okay. This is the Airavateswara temple. This also is in Tamil Nadu, also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is built in the 12th century, again by the Cholas, again a Shiv temple. Have a look at this. Okay. So you want all the great temples, you have to go to the south of India because that's where they weren't demolished. Mahabalipuram, the Shore temple. Have a look at this. Probably, again, 8th century, 725 is the figure given to us. Again, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, again built by the Cholas. Probably part of a massive complex that has since fallen into the sea. Have a look at this lit up at night on the seashore. Look at this. Absolutely gorgeous. This is taken from a offshore. It's known as the Shore temple for this reason. This is the Brihadeswara temple. This is Thanjavur, very famous site in Indian history. Again, Tamil Nadu. This is a 5th century temple, so about 15 to 1600 years old. It was built upon by the Chalukyas, the Pallavas, the Cholas, all built on this site. Have a look at this. This is a Tamil inscription going back 1500 years, found in Thanjavur. Absolutely gorgeous. This is the top of the temple over there. Look at the level of scale of the carvings that have been done. Absolutely fabulous. This is the Lingaraja temple. This is a 6th century Shiv temple, the largest temple in Bhubaneswar in Odisha. Vishnu temple, the current structure which you see over here is a 11th century structure built by Somavanshi, the king Yayati the first of the Somavanshi dynasty. Have a look at this. Again, Bhubaneswar. Look at this. The Dhwaj on top of the temple. This, of course, is the very famous Tirupati, Venkateshwara temple. It's a Vishnu temple in Andhra Pradesh. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a 9th century temple. The next up is Bhogandishwar. Bhogandishwar is in Karnataka. Again, it's a 9th century Shiv temple dating back to the time of the Rashtrakutas. This is in Chikballarpur. Absolutely gorgeous places. And finally, I'll leave you with Jagannath Puri. Now, Jagannath Puri, ladies and gentlemen, again a very, very famous site. It's a Vishnu temple. This dates back, the current structure dates back to at least the 12th century AD. Here's another site of Jagannath Puri taken from the opposite end. So this, ladies and gentlemen, puts you the context of you have to find the ancient temples in the south of India. But were they only in India? Not really, no. The reason was, have a look at this. Angkor Wat. Now, Angkor Wat, ladies and gentlemen, built in the 12th century by King Suryavanshi with the chief advisor by the name of Divakar Pandit. It was a Vishnu temple that later on got converted as the country gradually converted. This is in Thailand, in Cambodia, obviously, as the country converted to Buddhism. But initially, it was a Vishnu temple. A beautiful shot, I'll just show you. This is the Prambanan temple in Indonesia. This is a 9th century temple in Indonesia. Okay? So at the same time, the temples that I've just shown you in the south of India, this is the same period, Prambanan in Indonesia. It's 47 meters tall. So it's one of the largest and tallest temples, Hindu temples in the world, and it's not in India, it's in Indonesia. This is a more recent building in 1920. This is the Sri Subramaniam Swami Devasthanam. This is in Malaysia. Okay, have a look at this. This is the Pashupati Nath temple, a very famous temple in Nepal, one of the oldest temples dedicated to Lord Pashupati, one of the largest temple sites in the world, again in Nepal, which remember has a large Hindu population. This is Bangladesh, Dhakeshwari temple, which is the largest Hindu temple in Bangladesh. It was completed in the 12th century. So again, an old temple. This is the Sri Kali Mandir in Myanmar, built in 1871. This is the Sri Subramania temple in Fiji. It is the largest Hindu temple located in Fiji. It was been recently built in 1984. They finished it. This is in Pakistan, of 16th century temple that is still existent. This is Singapore in 1859. The Thendayuthapani temple in Singapore. This is Borobudur in Indonesia, what is now the largest Buddhist temple in the world, and you can clearly see the architectural similarities because, of course, Buddhism was also born right here in our land. And I wanted to show you this image of Angkor Wat. Okay, it's very, very telling. And it doesn't end here, because I began this concept by saying that there is a classical revivalism happening, and you saw that in the building of Ayodhya. But what I found absolutely fascinating, and the reason I picked up this subject to discuss today, is have a look at this. This, ladies and gentlemen, is an architectural rendering of the Babs temple in Abu Dhabi. It is almost complete. This is one of the latest shots of construction. It is going to be inaugurated in a few weeks. So at the same time, you're going to see the Ayodhya temple inaugurated. The largest temple in Abu Dhabi is being inaugurated, and it's absolutely humongous. Look at this, with an auditorium, amphitheater, massive site in Abu Dhabi, which is an emirate. These are the Emiratis laying flower petals, so rose and genda ka phool, at the foundation ceremony. They weren't worried about some Hindu phobia. They're welcoming classical revivalism in the Emirates. This is the foundation stone that was laid of the Babs temple in Abu Dhabi. Here's the one in New Jersey, which has just been completed. Look at this. It's the largest temple in North America. You know, ladies and gentlemen, 65,000 cubic feet of Italian Carrara marble. They bought it from Italy, shipped it to Rajasthan to be carved, then shipped it to New Jersey, and volunteers then came and constructed this temple. Just look at the carvings that have been done. This has literally been inaugurated weeks ago. Look at this. Absolutely fascinating classical revivalism happening. Not only, this is architecture, this is sculpture, this is art. Look at this. What a job they've done. Absolutely fabulous. Here's a look at the roof. Carrara marble, carved so finely. Absolutely beautiful. This is the Hindu mandir which is being built in Germany. We've interviewed the priest who's organizing this as we speak. This is the Mahalakshmi mandir in New Zealand, which is being constructed. This is the Swami Narayan mandir, which is being constructed in Bahrain. This is an architectural rendering. So you're seeing across the board classical revivalism. And that's a very happy thing. It's a happy thing for Bharat, for the civilizational roots of the Indic civilization that go from Indonesia to Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, Nepal, Burma, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka. And it's happening all across the world. It's architecture, it's art, it's sculpture, it's learnings, it's philosophy, it's theosophy. And you're seeing it happen. So in the span of a few short weeks, you're going to see all this architecture being reborn, not only in the holy places like Ayodhya, but all over the world. And it's a telling compilation that we've tried to put together for you today. Thanks for watching. We take a break.